elegant, successful, beautiful, classy, unique, purpose, empowered, strong, overcomer, free, powerful. She rises. Hey there, and welcome to Successful.
Beautiful.
And
And I'm Natalie,
I'm Nikki.
I'm Tonyeka.
and we are excited that you've chosen to join us again today for our podcast. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I think that little bell thing gives you notifications
Yes.
on there. Yeah,
Mhm.
so do that too, so you
Mhm.
can know when we've posted our episodes. Again, welcome. So today on Successful, Beautiful, and we are talking about divorce.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you didn't watch our earlier episode, go back so you can know a little bit about us.
Mhm.
It will help explain some of the things that we will talk about today, so you can just get to know who we are. So again, I'm Natalie, and I've been divorced for 9 years. How long have y'all been divorced?
My name is Nikki, and I've been divorced for a year and a half.
I'm Tonyeka, less than a year.
Okay. So, in regards to time, we have different spans of time with divorce, but divorce nonetheless. Again, I say again, based on what we posted on the earlier episodes. Again, if you haven't seen them, go back. Yes. But in regards to the spans of time, we have different timing in how long we have been divorced. But we have lots of things in common between the three of us. So we want to share some of those things with you, in particular in regards to divorce and the experiences that we each had leading up to divorce, going through the process of divorce, and then after divorce. I think I can probably say the aftermath and then the after
Yeah.
Mhm.
of divorce. So we've each told you how long we have been divorced. Another unique thing that you will learn if you hadn't seen the earlier episodes is that each of us are former pastors' wives.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Very.
We'll have an entire episode about being pastors' wives, former pastors' wives. So please go back, watch, and then when we post that topic, you'll be able to learn a bit more about us in regards to that. So, something that we've talked about before, the three of us, is divorce. And I was sharing that divorce in and of itself, that term means to rip or to tear,
Mhm.
you know? And I
Mhm.
think one of you guys said, it feels just like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that you,
Tearing-
Nikki?
That was me.
Yeah.
It felt like tearing away of the flesh.
Mhm.
And the Bible speaks about the two become one. And going through the process of divorce, it was just that,
Yeah.
and it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. I know that just divorce in and of itself is a trauma. So, to kind of define trauma very, very loosely, is experiencing something in your life that you should not experience. Very, very loose definition of it. So, you shouldn't experience a car accident. That's trauma too,
Mhm.
or that's traumatic, and then the trauma is what happens based on the incident. Divorce is something that you should never experience.
Right.
We should never go through
I
divorce.
agree.
Mhm.
I believe because, not to get deep into scripture or anything, but for me, I didn't get married to get a divorce.
Right.
Exactly.
I was
Mhm.
in it for the long haul. I really thought
Absolutely.
that I would die with
Mhm.
him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Me too.
but it didn't turn out that way.
No.
Yeah.
And it was hard. So I guess let's get vulnerable a little, ladies, or a lot,
Okay.
and talk a bit about our divorces, kind of how we got there. So
Mm.
Who wants to jump in first?
I'll just jump off the
Dive
cliff
on
here.
in.
So married for 23 years. My ex-husband wanted to be divorced. He actually, said, I can't do this anymore. And for me, it was not something that I wanted because, like you, my vision, thinking back to our wedding day at the altar, giving my vows to the, family and friends and making my covenant to God, like I'm in it
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
And so it was my desire to, work through or, whatever, any issues that we had. So yeah, we are definitely divorced because he wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I often say about divorce, even now, 9 years after, is that divorce is not something that I wanted. You know, I didn't desire it, even with all of the things that we experienced in our marriage, the emotional abuse, the infidelity, the neglect, the rejection, the um, condescension, the just all of the things. I was still wanting or willing, maybe that's a better word for me. I was still willing to remain in the marriage. And initially, he said that he wanted a divorce because he wasn't happy. And that was a whole thing. So he wasn't happy, said that he wanted a divorce. Okay. So we concluded that we were going to get a divorce. We separated for a period of time, and we were separated for almost a year. And I called him because I didn't know how to get divorced, and I wasn't even really planning on like getting an attorney or anything. We were just gonna get a divorce. I was I'll say naive, but then still not wanting it. So maybe that was my way of avoiding, you know. And so I called him one day and said, "Hey, I never got divorce papers." You know, again, I didn't know how divorce worked. I remember like on the soap operas when they would show up, they would always have like the blue paper. Y'all remember? Somebody would show up at the door with the blue paper. So naively, I expected somebody to show up at the door with blue paper, you know, but they didn't. And so I called him and I was like, so how does this work? And his response to me, like, took me on a completely different turn. He said, "Oh, I really didn't want a divorce. I just needed a break."
Wow.
And I think I did just that. Like, dude, you've taken me through this whole thing, and now I'm pissed. I mean, pissed to the highest level of pissivity. And I retained an attorney because I didn't know how to get divorced. Like, I'd heard people saying you could do it on your own or whatnot, but I didn't know what to do. So I got an attorney and moved forward from there. And I needed that because, again, I was willing to stay in what was an emotionally abusive relationship. And I was willing to stay in it for the rest of my life. I still was, even in all of that. So that's how we wound up going in the process of divorce. Yeah. T.
So for me, my ex did not want the divorce, and neither did I. But it was something that had to be done, because when you're at a point where you don't want to be accountable, you want to live a single life, you want to do everything that single people do. You want separate accounts, right? You want, but those are ways to hide things. So if there's no accountability, why are we married?
Yeah,
we're married for show. So I made the decision, to retain an attorney and to do it. Can't play in my face anymore.
Play in my face.
No.
Yeah,
it's not okay.
I will say, even 9 years after, and shorter time for you guys, that I'm really sorry that that we all experienced that. You know, that's not something that I would wish upon my worst enemy, that they experience divorce. When I think about the definition again, the ripping and the tearing, it almost feels like being drug across the gravel, you know, and like pieces of your skin being ripped away from you, because it is such an emotional experience, you know.
It is.
It really is. And I know that there are people that are watching. They may be saying, "Oh, it wasn't for me," and maybe it wasn't for you. But there is something that you are depleted of when you go through divorce, because that's what happens with divorce. Because there's a stripping that happens. So with divorce as well, there's also grief. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell me about that for you guys. What was that like?
Ooh, grief is rough.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to do it without being in therapy. And so being able to my therapist to help me walk through it.
Yeah.
And say, it's okay to grieve. You were married for almost 32 years. It's okay to miss him. It's not okay to miss those behaviors.
Yeah.
It's not okay to be emotionally abused, and those type of behaviors are not okay. So realizing, okay, it's okay if I'm feeling sad today because I'm missing him. It's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then I'm reminded by the actions of how I got there. And then those emotions
And
change
dissipate.
quickly.
Absolutely. Because
Bust the windows. Self-control.
Okay, Nikki, what about you?
For me, the grieving process was, I hated the fact that it's a cycle, you know, and it's, you know, you can feel this way one day and then, or in one moment, and then in the next you feel this way. And, you know, you get through it, but then it's like the next day you may have to start all over again.
Yeah.
You know, I did grieve, and it was just really hard for me, you know. But like Tonyeka, I also have a therapist. I still have a therapist. I am such a supporter of mental health, and just knowing what all that means. There's no way I would be here without my therapist.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. It's just the ebbs and flows of grief, and understanding. I had to give myself grace because you're grieving a lot.
Yep.
Not only are you grieving, for me, I'll speak for me, the death of your marriage, but you're also grieving your future plans. You're also grieving your paradigm of thought.
Yeah.
You're grieving, you know, what your life looks like, and now you are having to reset and recalibrate. And that's not easy, especially after. And I feel like it really doesn't matter how long you've been married, but I will say for me, being married as long as I was, it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Grief is certainly not linear by any means.
Right.
It's what's that kind of chart where they have the
peaks and valleys? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. There's a name for it. I can't recall what it is, but I feel like that's kind of how grief is. You know, you can be high and then plummet.
Yes.
You know, to zero in moments, in hours, in days, in months, in years. Because grief is also not this. Can be not. It can be this short window of time, or it can be extended. You know. And then, like you were saying too, Nikki, the experiences that you have had, the good ones, you grieve that. And I know for me, I grieved what it was that I had hoped that our marriage would finally become at some point, you know, and just never experiencing that, you know. That was very hard for me because I thought, I made this commitment, and honestly, I didn't know if I would be able to make that commitment again,
Mm-hmm.
to someone else and have the hope of experiencing an amazing marriage,
Mm-hmm.
because I always longed for that,
Yeah.
And never had it,
Mm-hmm.
never had it. So that was a big part of my grief
Mm-hmm.
for me. Something that my daughters told me, he and I had been separated, and the girls and I remained in our home, and we had a pretty large house, and the girls' rooms were upstairs, and ours was downstairs, and the girls would get up in the morning, and we'd talk, and they were like, "Mom," or they would say, "Mommy" back then, "Mommy, how'd you sleep?" And I would say, "Oh, I slept good," or whatever, or they would say, "Mommy, how are you doing today?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm good." And one day, they became the therapist. I was like, "These little jokers." So we were, I think we were in my bedroom or we were in the kitchen. I can't recall which one, but we were downstairs, and my older one, the mother of the two, we were talking, and they said, "Mommy, how are you doing today?" And I said, "Oh, I'm good." And then I saw her look at her sister,
Mm-hmm.
and then I could tell that they had
Yeah.
like had a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then she looked back at me like, "Mommy, we think you lie to us." And I was like, "What?" And I said, "About what?" And then she said, "Because when we ask you how you're doing, you tell us that you're okay, but we hear you crying at night.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And you go see me cry right now, girl, because what in the world?" And that just broke me,
Yeah.
What broke me was that they felt like I lied to them, and that I was teaching them this lesson to suppress their reality,
Yeah.
you know. And I never wanted my children to live that because I had done that for
For
years,
years.
Mm-hmm.
and for them to know it, I appreciate it eventually that she called me on it
Yeah.
or that they called me on it. But the fact that they had that experience with me. And so we kind of put into place, we put into place this rule that we all say what we really are
Yeah.
feeling,
Mm.
And so I told them that I was really sorry that I'd done that. I just didn't want them to see me sad,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And now, these many years later, because even back then, my counsel to a client would have been something completely different
Yeah.
than what it was that I was actually doing,
Right.
And so we put into place this rule that we would say exactly what it was that we were feeling. So when they said to me, "Good morning, Mommy, how are you doing today?" that I would really tell them, So if it was a day that I was sad, I would say, "I'm really kind of sad today," you know. And they would, "Oh, we're sorry that you're sad, Mommy," or give me a hug or do
Mhm.
something
Mm-hmm.
loving and caring, Or if I'd say, "I am pissed,"
Mm-hmm.
and they would look at each other because for them that was a cuss word. They were like, "Mom," and I was like, "I am. I'm very angry today. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very angry
Mm-hmm.
today." And then I would have to work at not being angry at them because
Yeah.
they were the
Mhm.
ones that were present.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mhm.
that was our thing. And so just that their experiences and grieving, also a grief for me was that my children were going to experience this space in
Mhm.
life, a void
Mhm.
in life of a whole nuclear family.
Yes.
Because for me, that's a husband, a wife,
Mhm.
and children.
Mhm.
And they would not experience that ever again,
Mhm.
ever again
Mhm.
as the children,
Mhm. Oh
That
yeah.
that broke me,
Mhm.
because I was willing to, be drugged through the mud, I guess,
Right.
in order for them
Mhm.
to be all right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and then thinking now, I guess we can kind of take a turn here and thinking now about how our children's lives look
Mhm.
because of our divorce.
Mhm.
What is that like for y'all?
Very
kids?
different.
Yeah.
It actually saddens me. That was another thing that I grieved is um, my thought of what my family looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
growing up, my mother was a single parent, and when I got married, I'm like, and I had kids, and like I get to give my kids our family.
Mm.
And so now, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so now that my kids are older, they're older, but it's still different,
Yeah.
And so they still have their dad, and of course they have me, but it's just different,
Yeah.
because now it's like you never want your children to feel that they have to choose sides.
Absolutely.
And I feel that for them, they feel that way at times. And I never want that for my children.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. What about your kids, Tony?
All three of my children are grown, but it still is quite different. I grew up with my mom and a stepdad. And so I struggled from a little girl with rejection because I always felt like I wasn't a part of their family.
Yeah.
And my mom was in love with my dad, and he didn't marry her. And so I always felt rejected. And so with the divorce, it was always important to me not to have a blended family because, we all had the same, because I didn't want to repeat but that's really not reality. Yeah, what I experienced, that's really not reality. The world is blended. There's so some things we just have to accept, and this is a part of it. And so they are good. They're adapting in their own ways. I've offered therapy, but they're resilient.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're getting through it.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
Yeah. Agree with that. My children's experience. Well, I'll talk about how I grew up as well. I grew up with my mom and my dad. We were all in the home together until my junior year in high school, I believe. And then they separated. That was really trying, when my parents separated. My sister and brother, I think they had moved out by then. I can't recall. But growing up with your mom and your dad present, and then you watch them go through a divorce or a separation at that time, that was really hard, And then my mom, well, no, I guess they were still there. My mom's sister and brother and I moved into an apartment, and that was different. I had never lived in an apartment, so there was this major shift that happened in my life, just in our living arrangements, and I don't know that people really consider all of those things when thinking about divorce, the changes that your kids are going to experience, in making those decisions to divorce. I often say the kids are always the casualties, because they don't have any say, regardless of age. They don't have any say of what's about to happen in their life,
Right.
because it's not their relationship, and they are, and I say just not to be facetious or anything or to minimize, but they are just the kids. So because they just have to go along with it, and again, they have no say in it. They just have to deal with it, and that's not really fair to them, because their lives get turned upside down. Yeah. And I'm thinking about like some kids that parents may divorce and then they move to a completely different state, so then they don't even have access to their other parent, not regularly, at least, so divorce is hard on the kids too. Yeah.
And I think it's that way, Natalie, with any age that the kids are, whether they're small children, teens, young, they're adults. It's just hard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that goes to the point of God hating divorce. We had talked before, and I was saying that my thought with God hating divorce was, or my thought with it was that I watched my children wake up every single day from separation forward without their dad in the home with them, and I just don't believe that that's God's design for children, that they should have a healthy father, a healthy mom, healthy environment, and they get to grow up in that, but that's stripped away because of divorce. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Natalie, if I can, I will say on that, though, I do agree that it's sad for the father not to be in the house when they're young children. But sometimes, because in my situation, I wish that I had left because I would have left when they were smaller
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that my children would have received a better version of me,
Uh-huh.
a healthier
that.
version
Yeah. Yeah.
of me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that time is lost. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get it back. But
That's good.
it's good to make those decisions
Mhm.
and not to wait. Oh, I'm going to wait until they get adults.
Yeah.
Unhealthy is unhealthy.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I do agree with that. And I've told my children, I never should have done some things, or I should have stuck with plans that I'd had before, or things like that. And they said, well, you never would have had us. Well, Jesus. And they're like, Mom, I love you. I love you to life.
They're going to get you, Natalie.
But Jesus.
That's funny.
Ooh, I love my babies. I do. My young ladies. I love them very much. So, sticking along the lines of kids, how do you know when your kids are no longer struggling with the divorce? Again, regardless of age.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know
For me, I would say when they're able to just be themselves and not be guarded when you ask simple questions, even of, how was your day? Or what did you do today? If it involved being with their dad at church or if there's an event, they don't have to be as guarded.
that?
They say, oh, Mom, I went here and I did this. And it's just a natural flow.
Yeah.
I think initially they were very guarded. Like they couldn't say, oh, I went with dad to blah, blah, So,
Mhm.
and I think that it's part of the growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't feel pressured.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What you think?
I think that's a tough question.
Yeah.
it is.
Honestly, I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
Excuse me.
Mhm.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think that
Excuse me.
I'll talk about my children from a distance because I don't want to put their stuff out there because I've not asked for permission. I think for them that some healing has definitely happened in some areas, but I do believe that there are a lot of other areas that it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been 9 years. For me, that seems like a pretty good length of time, but it's not my dad, and and it's not my mom,
Mhm.
So the experience of that, I think, is long,
Mm-hmm.
hard,
Yeah.
and I think it's incumbent upon the parents to make it as easy as possible for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get along,
Mm-hmm.
I even say potentially having a healthy friendship, because I know some divorced people that are able to be friends with their former spouses. Not that they're like just hanging out with one another or anything of that nature, but they're able to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a care, a concern for one another, but it's not anything inappropriate. But they can call and say, hey, I'm considering this for the kids. What do you think about that? They're able to bounce things
Mm-hmm.
off of one another pertaining to the kids.
Right.
Nothing outside of that,
Mhm.
because you didn't want that.
Mhm.
Clearly, that's why you're divorced.
Excuse
But I think that can happen, and I really wanted that. To be able to be friends or to be cordial. I really wanted to be cordial, and that was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that depends on the health of both people.
agreed.
Mhm.
And when I say health, I mean emotional health.
And mental.
And mental.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll speak for me. In my case, I think it was better for me to set boundaries
Absolutely.
so that there's some form of respect, but also just protection for my sanity and my peace. And it would be nice to be able to, pick up the phone and have a discussion about, what do you think about this for, our children. But unfortunately, I'm not in that space.
Yeah.
It's co-parenting is hard, and both parents have to be willing to co-parent.
Yeah.
And that's just not my reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that. So let's talk about co-parenting. And Tonyeka, I know that your kids are adults. Your youngest is how old?
Excuse me.
5.
25?
Mm-hmm.
Your
Soon to be
youngest is 25?
Yes. Be 25
Sweet
in
Jesus.
2 weeks. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So I guess there technically isn't. I think that when we talk about co-parenting, we immediately think about younger kids, but you're still their parents, even as adults, because they experience things in their lives that their parents need to support, to speak to if they want them to, things of that nature. So do you find that with adult children, do you find that it's difficult to co-parent, or is it non-existent? What happens there for you?
It's non-existent.
Yeah.
I don't care to. So
Okay.
I deal strictly with the children. I mean, they're adults. So
okay. For me, my kids are young adults, again, 23 and 19. And there have been some things that they have experienced in their lives. And I try to make effort, at least to inform, if nothing else, to inform. I would desire that there were healthier communication, and maybe that could happen now. I don't know. There's not really anything that we discuss, but the things that my kids experience, I always want my girls to have a healthy father's perspective. I always want that, and then because they are adults, I have to leave it up to them to put certain things into place, in that relationship or whatnot, and hoping that they get the support, or not even necessarily the response that they want, but what it is that they need, and that doesn't really happen for them. And that really saddens me for them, because even for me, coming from a divorced home, my dad is there. I can call my daddy right now, and he would talk on this podcast. But I could call him and I could talk to him about some stuff, and see what his thoughts are about it. And I want that for my girls, just healthy though. I want it for my girls. So yeah. Okay. Heavy episode today.
Yeah.
Okay. So people that are experiencing, that have experienced divorce or are going through divorce, how do they heal and how do they forgive?
Therapy and Jesus.
Therapy and Jesus.
Therapy and Jesus.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I think that you, like I alluded to this earlier, you have to be willing to put in the work. I know for me, I'm still on my healing and forgiveness journey. It's a decision. Forgiveness is a decision. And the biggest thing with forgiveness is it really benefits me more so than the person I'm trying to forgive. Because lots of times the other person doesn't even know that they've offended you. And so for me, it's almost a daily choice, that I have a conversation with myself, in my quiet time in the morning. And sometimes I have to make a declaration daily or a minute by minute or hour by hour. It just depends
that you're going to walk
on
in forgiveness today.
Yes, I'm going to walk in forgiveness today. And it's I definitely understand why God hates divorce, because it's a domino effect.
Mhm.
It doesn't just affect, excuse me,
Mhm.
the husband and wife and the children. It affects other things like
Yeah.
your family dynamic,
Yeah.
Yeah.
their family dynamic.
Mhm.
It even when like I went to go do something at my son's school, and I gave her my ID, and she's like, "Oh, well, the name is different." Like, "Oh yeah, because I'm not married anymore."
Mhm.
It's just those things that you don't even think about.
Yeah.
But not to ramble and change subjects. But to your point, um, you forgive. It's forgiving. Forgiveness is a choice, and sometimes it has to be a daily choice. And then I just believe in the power of prayer,
Mhm.
and I also believe that Jesus can do anything,
Yeah.
and He can change my heart. You know, um, so yeah, that's how I'm walking along my journey of healing and forgiveness.
Mhm. I hear you. And forgiveness is a process.
Hmm.
Um, the scripture says to forgive quickly. I think it says, right? Um, it does. I think I'm positive there. I could be wrong.
I'm kidding.
But I think that it requires, like you were saying, like that daily talk with God,
Yes.
because that's hard,
It is.
especially if things keep happening,
Mm,
you know?
mm.
Like, this is a hard ask,
Yes.
Jesus,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that, Tonyeka? Forgiveness and healing.
Forgiveness, I'm still on that journey,
Mhm.
honestly, and just being transparent. Um, Forgiveness and healing is so important to move to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And so walking through it, walking through those emotions. Why am I angry today? Why am I,
Mm-hmm.
and just releasing it
Yeah.
and beginning to, I found that beginning to pray for that person
Yes,
helps
ma'am.
me to forgive and release.
Mhm.
But it does not mean, I think sometimes as Christians we think, oh, because you don't talk to the person, you haven't forgiven. And it's
Yeah.
easy to judge someone,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not forgiveness. That doesn't mean that I haven't forgiven
Right.
because I choose to set boundaries and not
Absolutely. And protect yourself.
and protect
Absolutely.
my peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so praying for that person really has helped me to release it.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
good.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That reminds me, and I won't give a whole long story here. But a couple of years before we even separated, excuse me, I knew that we were going to divorce, even though I was like holding on, like on the cartoons, they'd hold on something and their feet be dragging
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
the dirt.
Yeah.
I knew we were. I knew we were. And so I got into therapy. But I told God, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy, but I did not want a Christian therapist because I didn't want to, having been a pastor's wife, I didn't want nobody preaching to me. I didn't
Right.
want to hear scripture. I didn't want no prayer.
Right.
I didn't want any of those things. And I was very honest
Right.
with God about that, and I found a therapist that was an Orthodox Jew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew we weren't going to be talking about Jesus being Savior.
Mhm.
I was cool with that, Um, and God being who He is. In our therapy session, she says, doesn't the Bible say that you're supposed to pray for, and she like couldn't remember what the phrase said. And I was like, no, she is not talking about prayer in this therapy session.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you figure out what the
Yeah.
phrase is, because I'm not about to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
And I'm praying, silently, like, didn't we talk about this? I specifically,
Yeah.
I specifically said, that I did not want somebody that was going to be talking about scripture or anything to me. And then she said, I can't think of what it is, but aren't you supposed to pray for him?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
And so she said, but you don't. And I said, no, I don't. And she asked why. And I said, because I'm pissed and I think I hate him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So she said, okay, so we're going to start working through that.
Mhm.
I said, we're going to start working toward prayer. And she said, yeah, because that's what you believe, right?
Mm.
Ma'am,
Yes.
don't call me to the carpet on my face. Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Girl, get on somewhere. But that's exactly what we did. And the prayers were very simple to start with because I was still pissed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I really did believe that I hated him,
Mhm.
you know, and I didn't start praying that God would help me not hate him for a long time.
Mm.
But I would pray, Lord, cover him and protect him.
Yeah.
Amen. That would be it.
Yeah.
And my thought was with that was, I don't need nothing happening to this man because my kids are going to be hurt.
Mhm.
That was my thought behind it. Not because I really cared, honestly,
Right.
Mhm.
but I had to start praying.
Mhm.
And then eventually they became sincere.
Mhm.
And then the hate went away.
Yeah.
And the forgiveness came. And the forgiveness came in a way that I didn't even necessarily realize that it had.
Mhm.
You know, it was just kind of there one day.
Mhm.
You know, I wasn't mad anymore. If I heard somebody with the name that he has, you know, it didn't like
Yeah.
anymore,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I was fine,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm grateful for that because then I also realized that there was no longer any control over my life
Mm.
by him or the experience or the marriage or the thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So I was free
Mhm.
in that, and yeah, I was happy about it.
Mhm. That's something to be
Um,
happy about.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So we also talked about healing.
Yeah.
And kind of what that looks like. And a statement was made that healing hurts.
Mm. Yes, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Healing hurts. Nikki, I know that you've had surgery before.
Mhm. Mhm.
Tell us about that.
So I tore my Achilles in 2021
Mm-hmm.
and had surgery. And the same week that I had surgery, I had physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And my physical therapist wanted me to do something that I thought clearly you don't know that I had surgery. There is no way you want me to do this.
Mhm.
And you really expect me to do this? But as I went through the process, you know, there were things that I was expected to do so that I could be fully functional,
Yeah.
so that I could run and jump and, you know, do a calf race.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard. And there were times when I didn't want to go, and there were times when I would be crying in physical therapy because it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to do those things in order to get stronger and be fully functional.
Yeah.
And so if you parallel that with just healing in general from emotional scars, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
And it's painful, but if you want to be fully functional,
Mm-hmm.
like a fully functional adult and be the best version of yourself, you have to do those things. You don't have a choice.
Yeah. So that sounds like healing is more pain, but it's a different type of pain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Healing is almost a healthy pain,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
if we can call it
Yeah.
that, huh?
I would
Mhm.
agree.
Yeah,
Makes you stronger.
it makes you stronger, for sure. It at least gets that part that was weak. It builds that back up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to where it was, and then even beyond.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the real work,
Do
as
the
you were
real work.
saying,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I'll add to that with when you talked about divorce and the ripping away, I also felt that I was stripped of a lot of things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whether it was the process of divorce or whether it was the things that I endured in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And if I parallel that with, you know, my injury that I had and being stripped of mobility in order to get that mobility back, you know, it was a process,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and things that you have to do. But like Tonyeka said, you get stronger
Yeah.
and you get better. And I feel that there were some areas that I was stripped. However, God is building and adding and
Yes.
restoring,
Mm-hmm.
and painful process, but necessary.
Yeah, but necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a book title.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Painful but necessary.
Painful
Mhm.
but necessary. Mm. Okay. Okay. Of course, y'all know I have a bunch of thoughts swirling around in my head that will probably come to the forefront in a bit. So, since divorce, or no, let me ask this: the internal impact, the internal impact. How has divorce impacted your internal security? Meaning, like your sense of emotional safety, your sense of physical safety, maybe, your sense of financial safety, relational safety, emotional safety, and security. I'm saying safety, but I'm meaning security.
Mhm.
Um, how's divorce impacted
If I may,
that? If I may.
I believe that mine is stronger
Okay.
outside of divorce because I don't have to worry
Mm.
anymore. I'm not afraid of what's going on behind my back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid of what you're doing. I'm just not afraid. It's just me. So I can just focus on me.
Mm.
I wake up in the morning and I'm free. I'm happier. I don't have all of that baggage
Mm-hmm.
of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Did you feel that way immediately?
yes,
Awesome.
I will say
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did.
Okay.
I think for me, I'm going to use this phrase. It made me put on my big girl draws.
Yeah.
Because like Tonyeka said, you know, that you don't have the worry. Well, I'll say this. For me, it was now I'm responsible
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Yes.
And now I'm responsible for my children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm responsible for my safety. Of course, God is always with me. You know, He always has my back and He will always provide and protect. But then you do things to make sure, you know. So I learned how to shoot a gun, and you know, I learned how to do a budget, and you know, it's just
In that order.
in that order, yes. But you know, they're just things that you don't that for me I didn't necessarily think about because I had a partner,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just me,
Mm-hmm.
and so now I am fully aware of everything that I have going on and everything I need to operate my home and my finances and everything.
Yeah.
So the impact for me was it made me put on my big girl draws and grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And not only grow up and be responsible. Well, I was responsible before, but now I'm shouldering everything by myself.
Yeah.
But it also increased my faith
Mm-hmm.
because Jesus has shown up for me in such a huge way. I can't even put it all into words. I'll just say He is.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful. He is.
Yeah. For me, in those same therapy sessions, I went to therapy for 2 years every Friday at noon. And I learned in there that I was codependent.
Mm-hmm.
Blew me away,
Mm-hmm.
because I was a therapist then. And I never looked at myself as codependent. I never thought that I was that, because I've always felt like I was a fairly strong person. And for that label to be placed on me or to be given to me, or that diagnosis, I should say, made me feel weak,
Mm-hmm.
Or made me feel weaker,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, because I felt depleted already just in the marriage, but that made me feel weaker. And I felt less than what I really thought that I was
Mm-hmm.
until I learned to claw my way out of codependency, and really learn who Natalie was, not connected to him, who I was as an individual, what my own thoughts were, I remember one of the first questions that the therapist asked me was, "What's your favorite color?" And I couldn't answer her. Oh, that blew me away because I said blue, but that was his favorite color. And so, was it really? And it wasn't. You know, back then I think it was probably yellow. Now it's green. Kelly green. Love it. But yeah, I was codependent and I didn't know it. So it made me question myself as a therapist because I didn't know it, you know, and then just all of the dynamics that were present in the relationship really came rushing back. Like, oh, how are you helping these people? How are you effective in doing this? So my internal security then was like depleted, you know? And so again, like I said, I had to like claw my way back to knowing who I was and then really learning to evolve into who I am now and learning that it was okay that I wasn't those things that I subscribed to being when I was married because it fit the narrative, but it wasn't really me or things that I thought, oh, well, let me do this because it'll help or it will look a certain way. The portrait will be prettier if I do X, Y, and Z, or if I don't do X, Y, and Z. So yeah, my internal security was very low early on, but then I learned, girl, you are amazing.
Bad
Boss.
girl. Yes.
Who says that? Usher?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Usher.
Shout out to Usher. Hashtag Usher. Okay, ladies. So give us a statement to wrap up in regards to divorce. Who wants to start there?
Can you say more about this
Just
statement? Just
yeah. What would you share with someone that is divorced or going through a divorce currently that you want to encourage them? And always considering, you know, men or women.
may I go first? Okay, thank you. My statement would be, you can do hard things.
That's good.
That's it.
You can do hard things. I like that.
Because it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Nika?
I would say make the hard decisions. If it's not working, you've got to move forward. So, and you can make it. So.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I would say make sure that you're in therapy.
Yes.
This is about to be a huge plug for therapy. And yes, I am a therapist and have been forever, but I know it works.
It does.
If you have a good therapist that is able to speak to the things, to guide you in a direction so that you can see certain things that are happening in your life, that can confront you about things, that can challenge you on things, that can push you and urge you and encourage you to identify and accept the truth in your life, that will support you in what it is that you are facing or have faced, to help you walk on that healing journey and know that healing is a journey. Yes, you want it right now, like Nikki was talking about with her surgery. She didn't want to go through physical therapy, but it was absolutely necessary that she did so that she can do all of the things that she's able to do today when the injury happened in 21, you know, or the surgery happened in 21. So go to therapy, do all of the hard work. Don't skip your sessions. Be committed to the work. Don't think that your therapist is going to work harder than you because, again, a good therapist would look at you and be like, it's not my life, you know? So do the hard things, like Nikki said, and you can do the hard things. Make the decisions that you need to make, whether that is to stay and fight for your marriage because it's yours and you get to make whatever decision you want to make. You know, nobody gets to tell you, you know, girl, you ought to leave him, or man, you ought to leave her. Nobody gets to tell you that. It's your marriage. You get to do what you want to do with it. So make the decisions that you have to make, again, whether that's you're going to stay or if you're going to leave. But you make your decision. But if I may say, don't make that decision alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you are a believer in Christ, definitely pray. Even if you're not a believer in Christ, seek therapy. Just get the help that you need. That's not a decision that you want to make lightly. So, anything else, ladies?
Not for me.
No.
Yes, this has been great. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to help
Absolutely.
so many.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank y'all for allowing us
Yes.
this opportunity for us to help you. So, like, subscribe, share, and the little bell thingy for
Yes.
notifications. Again, we are successful,
Beautiful,
And
we thank you for joining us today. Have an amazing day.
bye.
Bye. The content shared on this podcast is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. While one of our hosts is a licensed professional counselor, the information provided here does not constitute a therapeutic relationship, nor is it a substitute for individualized mental health treatment or diagnosis. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-therapist relationship between you and our hosts. Any stories, examples, or discussions are either fictional, generalized, or used with permission for illustrative purposes and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic guidance. If you are in need of mental health support, we encourage you to consult with a licensed mental health professional in your area. If you are in crisis or experiencing a mental health emergency, please contact 911, your local crisis line, or 988, the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.